predictive value is also seen when individuals have a complex disease like a diabetes, which can then result in other comorbidities, and we can pick those, maybe cardiovascular, kidney failure, things like that. Machine learning and AI tools was really to dig into the world's literature to identify which biomarkers would give us the highest value, the deepest insight into the earlier detection of disease. So Dan Ballin, who joined and started the Molecular You program back in 2018, was mostly healthy, and she had a few little things on, preventing diabetes and managing some cardiovascular issues.
Welcome to one more episode of Unlocking the AI Advantage podcast, and this is your host, Ramesh Ganta. Today, I'm excited to again be broadcasting, podcasting, videocasting from Health Conference in Las Vegas. And I'm going to talk to the founder and CEO of a company that is revolutionizing test results using your blood. And with that, let me introduce the founder and CEO, Dr. Robert Fraser with Molecular You. Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much for having me here. You can call me Rob.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So, Rob, so welcome. And I myself am familiar with Molecular You because I've already seen your pitch at some other conference. So, very exciting. So, we'll get into a lot of details here. So, Rob, why don't you please introduce Molecular You to the audience?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Molecular You is a unique offering. We do a blood analysis of over 280 metabolites and proteins, which we do absolute quantitation on. The advantage of that is that we have very good data going into our algorithms, and we can then place that into our platform where we then calculate individuals' health risks so we can understand and rank order them to help practitioners decide where they should focus on. And then we dig a little bit deeper into those health risks to identify the root cause of the disease so that we're not treating the symptoms. The real advantage of looking at the root cause is that we can see disease really before it becomes symptomatic. So this is good on a predictive basis, and then preventive or early intervention in the case of a cancer or something like that. But in a case of a patient management, we can get to that root cause so we can devise care pathways that are very specific to the individual, so personalized in a way, and then follow on, see how they're doing. So this is a very dynamic measurement, so you never just do it once. You want to test and test again to see how you're doing and make sure that you are getting the outcomes that you're looking for. But that predictive value is also seen when individuals have a complex disease like a diabetes, which can then result in other comorbidities, and we can pick those, maybe cardiovascular, kidney failure, things like that, well in advance of them happening. And so that makes patient management much more insightful. And so you're not just guessing or waiting for symptoms to appear. You can be proactive and really keep the patient's disease under control.
Okay. So typically, let's say I give my blood sample, and then if you could just work through the process, how does it work for me, and what's the time frame for getting results?
Yeah. So we've it's really a standard blood sample. So it's basically a plasma sample. So we collect a tube of blood, spin it down, take the plasma. We need to freeze it down. The reason is that some of the things that we measure are labile. I should have mentioned that you should fast before you come in for about 8 hours. Usually do in the morning, like, common.
Just like a standard diabetes test.
Yeah, exactly. And then with that, we have everything at rest and no exercise either. Because these are dynamic measurements, they can go wild when you eat or when you exercise. So if we get them at rest, we can compare time and time again. Then we take the plasma, the frozen plasma thawed, and we run it through a mass spectrometer. And these runs take about 10 minutes to 40 minutes to run.
Okay.
But, there's shipping and getting everything involved. So it takes we're estimating in the US, it'll take about a week turnaround to get the data back to the individual. Once the LCMS is complete, and the QA/QC is completed, it gets uploaded into our systems, and then we can it's all automated, and so the results get sent to the practitioner almost immediately. And
okay, so what's the difference between, like, let's say I go to LabCorp, I'm in the US, right?
Yeah.
And then they draw my blood, and then they send it for testing, and then send back the test results a day after or something like that, right? So the doctor may have prescribed a specific things like, for if I'm going for my annual testing, so you'll say, hey, vitamin D deficiency or whatever, right? So diabetes and cholesterol and all that good stuff, right? So I get a complete report on all the different illnesses. How does molecular U testing contrast or compare with that kind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, if you were to do the 280 metabolites and proteins that we analyze, LabCorp would probably need about 20 tubes of blood because of the systems that they use. The logistics would be complicated because LabCorp gains efficiency by centralizing certain assays. So they'd be shipping all over the U.S., and then that becomes a bit of a logistic challenge. We run it all on the same test at the same time. The other advantage I would say that we give is that it's a non-hypothesis driven analysis. So we're using evidence-based analysis, and so we don't know what we're going to find until it appears. So we know what we're measuring, but we don't know where your health is until we are able to analyze all that data together. Whereas most tests that you would get through something like a LabCorp is ordered by the physician more to help them to decide how to treat you. So it's a diagnostic tool to help treat. Ours is not really diagnostic. It's a deep insight into your biology so that we can really get down to what's going on at the root.
Okay. So let me ask you another controversial question. So I'm sure you get this a lot from media and investor and all that stuff, right? So we have, within the last 10 years, you've been in existence. So we've gone through another company called Theranos, right? So I know you'll laugh, right? So the moment I think people hear about molecular U, so then people, oh, I see. So this is something similar to that company, right? I don't know if it is not. So if you could, compare and contrast again, is it a similar? Is it different? If you could just go through that.
Oh, well, it's very different. I think in principle, what Elizabeth Holmes was trying to achieve was early detection of disease and making it closer to point of care. So she had a idea that she could create or build an instrument that would test over, I think, about 100 different blood biomarkers, really well-known biomarkers.
Yeah.
There wasn't much truth behind what she was proposing. Let's also remember that Elizabeth Holmes completed 1 year of university. Our team is filled with PhD scientists that have published extensively. Together, we have over 1,000 publications, peer-reviewed publications. All of the assays that we run are very well-known instruments. Like the LCMS. Now we have really optimized how we use the LCMS so we can get absolute quantitation of these metabolites and proteins.
Yeah.
And we publish that so that people can see it and review it. So we're really wrapped around by all of the ethics in both our degrees, our studying, our education, peer review, and we have three world leading scientists on our team. And then I've been fortunate enough to work with them and build the team and coalesce all of this amazing brain power. And I don't want to disparage against somebody who doesn't have a university degree or a PhD or a postdoctoral fellowship or is not a professor at a university.
Yeah.
But they just don't have the expertise.
And then you're dealing with biotech, like it's the biology, it's a deep science here we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, and that's the other part of our team is we've got a lot of biotech. We've all been working in the industry myself. I have my PhD from the University of Alberta and Harvard, and then I've worked with 3 Lasker Award winners, studied in France, worked in the pharmaceutical industry, in the biotech-led teams all the way through that. So, we've been in this industry. We know how to behave. We know what truth is. We know that we have to show evidence. That's just how we operate. We're not hiding behind anything. We're right up front, and we share all the data. And we do a lot of collaborations too with other universities. So, yeah, it shouldn't even be mentioned in the same breath.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, it's science-based and evidence-based, and then you're saying explainability is a part of your what you're doing as well.
Exactly.
So let's get into the AI ML piece of it, right? When you started, so can you talk a little bit about the startup's journey when you started and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'd love to. So it dates back to really my background in the drug discovery industry. So I'd spent most of my career really trying to understand what are the mechanisms of disease. And the best way to understand that is really by looking at the biology, the functional biology, which is looking at the proteins and the readouts like metabolites. I've also done a lot of work in genetics and using genetics as a way to identify drug targets. But the most effective is really a functional test. Through my years, I've had a few drugs enter into the clinic and worked on drugs in the market. So I know all about the methods and how rigorous you need to be in order to get into human care. I teamed up with one of our most prestigious scientists, Dr. Peter Cullis,
Okay.
who is best known for his work in lipid nanoparticle systems, which are the delivery systems for nucleic acids. So that's like the COVID vaccine. So Peter actually, they used his technology for the Pfizer vaccine. He's also got other drugs on the market. And so he and I got together and thought, we need to do a better job than just treating the disease. We need to be looking at the whole person. We need to be more personalized in our care. We have to move away from this one size fits all type of approach. And so we formed this thing called the Personalized Medicine Initiative out of the University of British Columbia.
That seems way ahead of the times.
It was back in 2011.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were really leading edge. We actually we took the PMI URL that really disappointed Obama because he was doing the personalized medicine
Yeah.
as well. So anyway, we hung on to it. So we were the first ones there. But we were backed by some of our best physicians, pathologists, family docs, some of the emergency sepsis. We had the world expert on sepsis working with us, the fellows that studied cancer extensively. So really, really top-notch physicians and scientists, and we all came together and really worked together to find a way how we can better deliver care in a more personalized way. So we started with genetics, got into pharmacogenetics both in a family practice and also in a cancer care. So what would be the best drug for a certain individual? We did a lot of sequencing, what sort of things would give us the most insight into an individual's health. And it was a fascinating journey. And then we actually, when Molecular U first formed, or the idea was forming, we were going to do a whole genome sequence, epigenetic profile, microbiome, looking at fecal matter in the population.
Just boil the ocean.
That's what they told us. Yeah, so that we got a lot of criticism for trying to boil the ocean, and we were boiling the ocean, but we wanted to see what distilled from that boiling, so that we could find out what gave us the most value. And so in that exercise, we actually found that what gave us the greatest insights was the metabolome proteome. And it turns out that this is actually quite an affordable methodology now that we're getting it to scale. And we can look at, as I mentioned, right now we're doing 280 metabolites. And the metabolites are interesting because they're metabolites that we produce, but they're also metabolites that our microbiome produces in our gut. They get absorbed into our blood system. And they have profound effects on our health. They can be pro-inflammatory. Some of them are toxic, and they can affect our central nervous system, how we think, if we're happy, if we're sad. They can affect our cardiovascular system, helping form clots. So they're really important to understand. And but you can't just do that in isolation of everything else. And so by looking at what metabolites we're producing, which metabolites proteins we're producing, which the microbiome was producing, you start to get a really clear picture of what's going on. And that gives us that very high resolution of all the different factors that are at play. So the way we used machine learning and AI tools was really to dig into the world's literature to identify which biomarkers would give us the highest value, the deepest insight into the earlier detection of disease.
I see.
So across many diseases. So that's really how we landed on our first panel. But we're still searching for more, and we think we can extend our panel probably by another 400 metabolites by the end of next year. And then the year after, we think we'll have about another 500 proteins. And so we're getting into 1,000 biomarkers at one go, one run, so that people can understand their biology that much better. People being individuals, but also the practitioners, so we can get ahead of it. So when we that's really the history of molecular U, and then we spent the really the most challenging thing I would say is taking really high level science, complex ideas, and distilling it down into something that was usable within a clinical practice. And I would say we still have a little work to do there, because it is not really how we practice medicine right now. I mean, doctors are some of the smartest people you'll ever meet, but they train in a different way. So we need to make it very understandable so they can use this information. And so that's what we've been working on primarily. So we work with designers and product managers that can really help on that UX UI and make the product as accessible and easy to understand. And that's our goal, is to make molecular medicine accessible and simple to use.
Actually, that's great because yesterday I spoke to your data science Ash, data scientist Ash. So I dug pretty deep into AI/ML, how it evolved with the molecular U over this period, and then you gave the other side, so how the biomarkers and how you're expanding and all that stuff. So I think now we have a really good picture. So Rob, let's talk a little bit about you, right? So you started the molecular U, and you had a very successful career in drug discovery and all that stuff. Why were you putting yourself through this torture and then putting your family through this torture of a company instead of getting a safe salary at the end of the month?
Staying in drug development discovery. Well, I think I had a change of heart when we started to understand that if we could get in front of disease and detect it earlier, it would be a much more profound effect on humanity's health than trying to find a medicine that would treat every little thing.
Okay.
And more affordable, much more economical. I mean, everybody recognizes that if we can prevent disease, we're going to save money. I mean, it's not it doesn't take any serious calculations to do that. But what's hard to do is how do you measure prevention? How do you know where you are? I mean, you can say, well, you need to eat right and you need to exercise, but that's kind of hollow. Like, what exercises should I do? What should I eat? What are the things that I should avoid? And so that's what we've really been working on, of like managing the lifestyle so it becomes very specific for the individual, based on who they are, how their bodies are performing in the environments that they're living in. We all live in very different environments. Our environments are cultural, the air that we breathe, the food that we eat, the microbiome that's in our systems, even different parts of the world. And we've seen some really fascinating differences that are more regional than ancestral heritage based. So less on what our genetics are and more about where we live. And
is that right?
Yes.
Because I was about to ask you this other question about 23andMe and kind of a thing, right? So where take your DNA and then do analyze and all that stuff. So but how about this argument about, hey, I do not want to know what problems I might have because otherwise I'm going to just go worry about all those things. Instead, when the problem happens, I will treat it. So are you running against that thing that, hey, you of course you will take my blood and then you'll give me a sample report, okay, I have this much of probability of getting this cancer or that cancer thing, but I don't want to know until I get it, and then I will treat it.
I think that's that is a common thought, and people have this idea that if I get sick, someone's going to take care of my sickness. I think it's pointed in the wrong direction. Would you get on a plane and just hope the plane is flying till it fails, and then you're like, oh, I'm up here in the air, and now the plane is failing? No one is going to let that plane go if there's anything, any sort of detection. What about your car? I mean, nobody waits until their car fails anymore. We've been going in for checkups with their car, making sure they're fixed. And yet, you're right. A lot of people go, oh, no, I just don't want to know. I'm going to wait till something bad happens. Well, let's take our patient that we were able to detect the pancreatic cancer for. So we've been following her for 4 years.
Oh, that's actually a great use case study.
Yeah,
if you could talk a little bit
exactly.
about that,
Yeah,
please.
absolutely. So Dan Ballin, who joined and started the Molecular You program back in 2018, was mostly healthy, and she had a few little things on preventing diabetes and managing some cardiovascular issues, and we're doing a pretty good job back and forth. But by year 4, her values indicated that she was very high risk for pancreatic cancer. And so we alerted her practitioner, and the practitioner took some imaging and looked at the lesions that appeared, and they're quite small. But then he looked at our data and thought, okay, well, we should do a biopsy. And so he did the biopsy, or ordered the biopsy, and the biopsy indicated it was very aggressive stage 1 pancreatic cancer. Had she waited another 6 months, it may be a very different story.
I see.
So we caught it at the very earliest stage. She had her surgery. We tested her post-surgery, and all of her values, other than a few metabolic issues probably due to the surgery on her pancreas, came back into range. And this year, we're seeing no residual disease at all. She's perfectly clear. So if you were waiting for a symptom for pancreatic cancer to appear, you would be dead within 6 months. So now she's healthy, she's playing with her grandchildren, she's enjoying the company of her family. She's very productive professional, and we had her on stage here to tell her story and from her words.
That's a
And
great story.
it's a fantastic story, but it's not unique. The cancer is obviously, that story is a profound story, but people that are at risk for cardiovascular disease, that can end in a horrible way too. They get a heart attack, and you think you're healthy, you think you're exercising, you think you're eating right, you've read all the things that people say you should do, but is it right for you? And so getting into that personalization, following you over time, I think there's a huge advantage here, or opportunity for us to really help manage people's health. And when things like a pancreatic cancer or a colon cancer or breast cancer appear, we've got the numbers, we can look at it, we can act now. And that is really the best we can do for cancer. We don't know how to prevent cancer. We know there's a few risk factors, but there's no formula, there's
If
no
you know
magic formula.
earlier, then you can work on it. Yeah.
It's the only way you're going to get a great outcome for cancer. And then it's also much more cost effective. That surgery's much less than the chemotherapy, the loss of work time,
The
all the rest.
radiation and everything.
Yeah, and the pain.
The
And
pain, yeah. Suffering
so
that they have
so
to go through.
waiting is not really an option, I think. And I think we all. And the other thing that was really remarkable about Diane is she took full responsibility for her health. And I think we all need to do that, but it's hard because we don't have the information or background to do it. I mean, I've been studying biology all my life. I know this intimately, but that I want to make sure that information gets transferred to the larger population so that we can all understand our health and all act on our own biology so that we can stay healthier longer and live longer, healthier lives.
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry. No, I was just going to say there's been a really fascinating discussion or some statistics coming out that we've got a doubling of cancer rates or incidents in our younger population. So
Is that right?
cancers are appearing younger.
Almost
even at
doubling.
age.
That's a pretty.
That is doubling. Yeah,
wow.
for things like colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, certain breast cancers in certain populations, and it's confounding because we're getting. We're living healthier,
And then
so to
awareness
say.
of health is there, and then
Exactly.
Yeah, but
so why
still.
is it? So the only way we can really monitor this is through following people over time, longitudinal monitoring as we call it,
Yeah.
and using this multi-omic platform like we've developed. We can really do a lot of good, and I'm really excited by starting to apply this to broader populations.
That's great, Rob. So, as we conclude this podcast, the last question. So, what's next for Molecular You, and what stage are you at right now?
Yeah, so we've been operating in Canada for a number of years, as you mentioned, and mostly in a direct-to-consumer modem. But we're looking now at we've now got a partnership here in the United States that's running our assays. We're just completing the transfer of that technology. We should be getting our CLIA approval in the next few weeks. And then we are going to be going live in January here in the U.S., working primarily with...
Is it still a direct-to-consumer model
no,
or a different model?
Our business model is to work with clinics right now, but we do think there will be a direct to consumer opportunity as well. We don't see ourselves doing it, but partnering with groups that already have large
That kind of
populations
setup,
we're
yeah.
working with. Yeah, and it's a way to expand their own offerings and maybe give maybe something a little bit better than what they can do now. So we're really excited about the opportunity in the U.S. I think this is the United States is
Pretty large market.
it's a pretty large market, but it's also open and innovative, and people really are starting to care for their health because they pay for their health. And so I think that the sensitivities here are much higher for the cost of healthcare than maybe other jurisdictions where we have the universal healthcare. And people in Canada are, like you say, are happy to wait till they're sick. But here, I don't want to get sick because it's going to cost me a lot of money. So I think we've got a great opportunity here, and we're really excited and to help America stay healthy.
Last question. Financially, what stage are you like as a startup?
Yeah, so we've been supported by high net worth individuals most of our time.
So friends and family kind of funding so
Yeah,
far?
yeah. And then we've just closing a seed round now as we're transitioning into the U.S. to help us get established here. And then we're looking to do a Series A so we can accelerate our growth in the new year. And so we're really excited about starting to get our footing here and then really growing the
Fantastic.
company and expanding across the United States and beyond.
Great. Hey, Rob, thank you very much. This is a great conversation. We covered a lot of ground,
Yeah.
about your startup, your technology, and then what you're going to do next. Thank you very much.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you.